Good evening, everyone.
Kavod, how are you?
Shem, thank you. Okay.
Kavod, we did the tour, but I don't think we did the Shulchan Aruch.
Yeah, so we're going to start the bit Yosef here. So it says the Perek Chelek. Where is this whole thing? It's in Sanhedrin, as we said, right? Last time. Kuf bet amud bet aminan debayer lemishtar lemotzi mecha dekarim bishula. So it says, right, again, as we said last time, that if you want to make hamotzi, the proper place to bake the bread is where it's fully cooked, fully baked. פירש רש"י, מאיך הדקרים בשולה, דריכתא במקום שנרקמין פניה של הפת בתנור, דהיינו מלמעלה. So he says this is going to be on the top of the bread. או מסביבות הפת, or around. In other words, it's going to be on the outside, right, where it gets crispy there. או משולב, or the bottom also could be. אבל באמצע, לא. But he says not the middle, right? That's what we're coming to exclude the middle. Because the middle is nice and soft, and spongy, right? We don't want that. We want to break from the outside part where it's crispy there. So he says if they brought in front of him, before him, a piece of bread, so as we said, right, it should go for the outside, not the middle. Lishna acharina me'echa dekadim klomar me'echa demaktim lepot. Also, another way to explain is that it's a place where it first gets baked. The first part. Ve'ainu ach, same thing. In other words, the same explanation. Really, that doesn't really make a difference. Lishna acharina. Another way to say me'echa degamar bishula makom shel lechem afui arbe. Also, right as we said, the place where it's most baked. Ve'lo me'oto makom shekorin beshul. Yeah, so basically they're all the same, these explanations more or less. But he says that the first explanation is the best. Who says this? This was Rashi. So what was the first explanation? The first one was that do it from the outside and not from the inside. Very simple. But he says the words of Rabbeinu, the tour, seems to be going like the last opinion, right? Which means that the crispy part. Rambam, that's why it comes up in Rambam as well. שכתב פרק ז' מהלכות ברכות, ואינו מוציאה אלא ממקום שבישל יפה יפה. So he says the same thing, right? That you should break the bread, the place where it's nicely baked. ומסכת דרך ארץ, תניא, לא יפרוס אדם המוציא מקום ערך. So now he brings another Gemara, right? Which is Derech Eretz. Which is not really a Gemara, it's more like a Mishnah, whatever. So it says there, so the Tanya, a person should break from a place where, it's not soft, right? Don't break from the soft part. The hard part is good. I have to tell you that, like, I'm guilty of this, myself. When I like buy a loaf of bread, especially like this like Bukharian bread, the Eastern bread, whatever. So I'm always eating from this, from the sides, the crispy parts, because that's the part I like. So I just like go around, take all the crispy stuff, and I just leave the middle, So that's exactly what he's talking about. Okay. Anyway, yeah, this is my kind of halacha, it's my personal taste. Anyway, so he says, והגות מהמוניות כתבו פרק נזכר בשם ספר המצוות שיש לבצוע בצד התחתון. So he says, right, do from the bottom של הפת, ששם מתבשל תחילה, because that's where it bakes first. Right, so the truth is, that it depends on the structure of the oven and how, the loaves are placed inside. So really, it depends on that. So, each oven will have different results. But nowadays, probably the top of the loaf will be the most crispy part. Or the sides, like we said, right? One or the other. Okay. So he said that's the way it's custom in France. He says they do below but he says when it comes to Germany, nohagim b'tzad ha'elyon. They do the top. He says, okay, well, because that's the part where it gets crispy first. והרם היה חתך אחד משני צדדים לצאת ידי שניהם. So he says the Ram, what he would do is take from both sides, the top and the bottom. So this way to fulfill the obligation of both opinions. Oh, well, okay. That's a nice idea. Okay, good. So that's the explanation that we're talking about here. And then let's move on. So it says, ויחתוך פרוסת בציעה והניחנה מחוברת לפת. And so the tour goes on here. That he says, what should you do? He says, cut it, but leave it attached to the loaf. Interesting. So says Bit Yosef Beg Kitzad Merchin. Where is this in Brachot Lametet Amud Aleph? Amar Rabbi Chia Barashe Pata Tzenuma Beki'ara Mevarchin Alea Amotzi Upliga de Rabbi Chia Amar Rabbi Chia צריך שתכלה ברכה עם הפת. כלומר, צריך שתכלה ברכת המוציא עם פריסת הפרוסה מן הפת, והי פרוס עומד הוא מתקיף לה רבה, מה ישנה צנומה דלא דכי קליה ברכה, פרוסה קליה, על הפת, נמי גמר הפרוסה גמרה, אלא אמר רבה מברך ואחר כך בוצע, והסיגנא דלך כרבה. So there's a discussion over here in the Talmud, how to break the bread. In other words, the sequence, right? So when you're blessing, right, hamotzi, should the bread still be whole, or should it be already broken? You already broke it. So there's a discussion about this and differing opinions here. So Perish Rashi explains, right? So he says first. So Rashi says like this, right? According to the first opinion, what you do is you finish all the blessing, and then that's when you break the bread. That's what we do, right? We simple people, whatever, right? That's what we, makes sense, right? It's logical. The Kalia Bracha Apat Shalem. So what does that mean? That when you finish the blessing, Hamotzi Lechem Min Haaretz, the loaf is still complete. It hasn't been broken yet. That's a good way to do it. That's what the Rambam says also, Perek Zayin Milchot Berachot. Mashlim Bracha Ve'achar Kach Botzea. Right. So he says, right, first finish the blessing and then break the bread. Why? Why is that the proper way to do it? Because you want to, right, bless on a complete loaf, right, which is more honorable, right, and more respectful, whatever. That's the idea. So it goes on, וכן כתב רמב"ם פרק ז' מהלכות פרעות, משלים הברכה וברכך בצע, ורבי דוד אבודריהם, so this rabbi, שפסק כמאן דאמר, זה צריך שתכלה הברכה עם הפת טעות הוא בידו. So he says, right, this rabbi made a mistake, because he wrote that when you finish the blessing, the bread is already broken pretty much, right? That's what he's saying. So he said that's a mistake. וכתב רבנו יונה, says רבנו יונה, אלא אמר רבא מברך ואחר תשלום כל הברכה בוצע. So Rava says proper thing to do, as we said, right, is first to finish the blessing and then break the bread. ויש שחוששים מפני זה ואינם רוצים לחתוך הפת בסכין קודם הברכה. So he says, therefore there are, people who don't want to, because of this, due to this halakha that we just learned, they don't want to first cut the bread with a knife and then make the blessing. ואומרים שאם חותכים אותו בסכין, אף על פי שדבק הוא בפת, לא הביאה שלמה. But he says, you know what? It's not good to do that. Why? Because if you cut it with a knife, even though it's still hanging on to the loaf, it's not totally detached. But he says it's not really complete like that once you cut it. ואין זה נראה שיותר נכון הוא שיחתוך אותו בסכין. But he says, you know what? Doesn't seem right what he's saying. So he says the better way to do it is to cut it with a knife first. And it's going to be sticking, it's still stuck to the loaf. In other words, he didn't totally cut it off. He just sliced it a little bit. Um, yeah, I've seen this like in Ashkenazi families. They do this. They first slice it, and a little bit, and then they make the blessing. ויהיה דבוק בפת, ולאחר תשלום ברכה יבצע אותו הפת. And then, right, once you finish the blessing, then you really break the bread, right? In other words, totally, break it off altogether. מי שיברך ויחתוך אותו בסכין קודם אכילה, but it says before you eat it, whatever, you should cut it with a knife. שזה יראה הפסקה, that this, it's going to be like a interruption. וכדבריו כתבו התוספות, that's what it says in תוספות, והראש ומוליכי, all these rabbis, וכן כתבו הגאות מימוניות, also this rabbi, פרק ז' מהלכות ברכות, בשם הרם, the name of the Ram, וזהו שכתב רבנו, ויחתוך פרוסת בצייה והניחנה מחוברת לפת. So he says that's what the two wrote also. Then what? First cut it a little bit, right? And it's still attached to the loaf, right? And so this way it's a little bit cut before. וכתבו התוספות במוליכי, this rabbi said, ומי בשבת נכון להחמיר לברך קודם משכתוך, שלא תשמט ידו לבצוע קודם שתכלה הברכה, שאז לא יהיה ללחם משנה, right? So he says, but it says on Shabbat. So there, but better not to do this trick. Don't cut with the knife beforehand. Rather, first make the blessing and then, break it. Why? Because otherwise, you're not blessing on a complete loaf. And on Shabbat, you need to bless on 2 complete loaves of bread. Lechem Mishnah, So therefore, it doesn't succeed like that. Okay, good. וצריך לחתוך מיד שאם יאחוז בפרוסה, שיעלה שאר הכיכר עמו. So he says, but you have to cut it a little bit, as we said, right? A little bit. Because you cut it a little bit more, too much, so then you're already blessing on a loaf which is not complete. So it's going to be like you're blessing on a sliced loaf, So according to this, by the way, I just want to tell you, a person really shouldn't, buy sliced bread because, because he's not getting a complete loaf like that, right? So, I mean, for sure on Shabbat he should not do that, right? Bless on a sliced loaf, that's for sure not the proper thing to do. So on the weekdays you can get away with it, if you like sliced bread for some reason or whatever it is, right? Some people like that. I like it too, I have no problem with sliced bread. But on Shabbat, for sure, that's not the proper thing to do, obviously, because it has to be a complete loaf. But even on a weekday, right, if you want to do it like the best way, so, it shouldn't be sliced to the loaf. But, not that it's forbidden to do that, don't get me wrong. It's not forbidden to buy a sliced loaf, but what I mean to say is, the best way to do it is to have like a complete loaf. Okay, whatever. One of those things, Okay, so we'll go on. Just give me 1 second here. Okay. So וצריך לחתוך מיד שאם יחזור בפרוסה בשאלה עמו, as we did this already, וכן כתב השם על הראש, the rosh writes like this, והביא ראיה מדתן, he brings a source from that which we learned in the Mishnah, פרק שלישי דטבול יום, third פרק of טבול יום, רבי מאיר אומר, אם אוחז בגדול והקטן עולה עמו, so he says, if he's holding the large part of the loaf, and the small part, goes together with it, so therefore it's considered like one loaf, even though it's slightly cut, whatever, or partially cut. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, im ochez b'katan v'gadol olei imo, so Rabbi Yehuda says even more. in a more stringent way. If he's holding the small one and the big one goes with it, so then it's considered like one. So he says, halacha zak Rabbi Yehuda. Oh, so therefore it has to be really attached well, because if it's really like cut, substantially cut already, so then what's going to be is if you take the small piece, right, the big piece may break off because it's not really attached very well. That's what he means to say. Okay. Anyway, ואף על פי שהגאות כתבו אחר זה, שרבנו ברוך כתב, אין נחוש לכך, and even though he writes afterwards that Rabbeinu Baruch said, we're not really concerned so much about this, כיוון שסוף סוף יש לחתוך ולביצוע לתנן בה, because since he has to cut anyway in the end, we don't really care, וכדי שפיר שלם it's really called complete anyway. But he says he's one against all these, rabbis, right? The Ram and the Rosh. So therefore, we don't pass like that. The old She'en Ta'am Bidvarav says also the reasoning is not good there. Uh-huh. Okay, good. בשיעור הפרוסה כתב הרמב"ם לא יבצע פרוסה קטנה. So he says the Rambam, right? The size of a slice. So we'll see what this means, right? בפרק ז' מהלכות ברכות, it's the seventh פרק ברכות, לא זה ברכות, ונראה שלמד כן מדרמינן פרק 3 שאכלו. He learned this from where it says in גמרא ברכות מ"ו עמוד א', בעל הבית מוצא כדי שיבצע בעין יפה, right? So he says that when the host, right, of the dinner or whatever, the meal, right, he breaks the bread, he should do like generously. So what does that mean? When you're giving your guest, right, don't give him like a birdie portion, a bird's portion. Give him something substantial, right? So, he doesn't feel like, oh my God, this guy's so cheap. He's giving me, a little thing there, a little crumb. Right? Come on, what's that all about? Right? Be a little bit liberal, generous, right? Go for it, right? That's what he's saying. So then how much should you give, right? What's the size, So the size is kazait, give him a kazait. So this, he got something substantial there, right? Not some crumbs, Okay. Some say do less than a kazait. Okay, whatever. Not too much less. Okay. Good. And then on the other hand, right, says the tur, but don't give too much also, it's not good. Right? Meaning what? It shouldn't be more than an egg size. Right? So you want to give like a nice, normal size, right? Not too big, not too small. So what's the problem if it's too big? Because then it looks like, like gluttony. Right? That's the problem. Where's the source for this? Where it says in Kitzat Mevarchin, Lametet Amud Bet, in the Gemara Brachot there, also in Shabbat, Kuf Yud Zayin Amud Bet, Rabbi Zera Hava Batzah Kula Sheruta, Klomar B'Shabbat Haya Botzea Prusa Gdola. So he says, right, that on Shabbat, he would, cut like a big slice. You know what I mean? He would break off a nice big piece. Why is that? Because on Shabbat, you have to be more generous. After all, it's Shabbat is a grand, large meal, right? It's not like a little dinky meal. We're not eating dinky on Shabbat. So therefore, don't give him a dinky piece, Give him like a nice big one. How big should it be? So he says, right? It should be enough for the whole seudah, right? Oh, that's a big piece, right? Depending on how much you eat. So, it could be like, let's say, I don't know, for argument's sake, right? Uh, 2, 3 slices, right? I don't know, God knows, whatever. Like that. There is also another, opinion, by the way, brought down the Kabbalah, which says that you should give him a kazait even on Shabbat. You know. So yeah, but the custom is more like the simple, which is we give on Shabbat, like a larger piece, as we said, which is enough for the whole meal. But if you did kazait, you have what to rely on, you have the Kabbalah to rely on, whatever. So that's also good, but it's all good. But don't give, those birdie portions, right? On Shabbat, especially, we don't want that, right? That's like, looks very cheap, looks very, frugal. We don't want that. Okay. So he asked the Gemara their question about this. Amar le Ravina le Ravashe. So he asked him, "Veha mitchazek ki Rav Tanuta." But it says when you give him like such a big piece like that, it looks like gluttony. So he answers him, "Amar le kivan dechol yoma lo avid hachi." So he says, "No, not really, because since he doesn't do that every day, right? Ve'ayidna avid hachi. Now he does it on Shabbat." Lo mitchazek kiravtana. So it doesn't look like gluttony, It just looks like you're honoring the Shabbat with a nice big piece there. Kiravtanu. ושנים במסכת דרך ארץ. So it says in דרך ארץ, לא יאחז אדם בפרוסה כביצה. So he says, don't take a slice which is like a egg size. בידו פעם אחת in one shot, ועושה כן הרי זה מעבטן. So if you do that, right, if you take like a egg size, so it looks like gluttony, you're a glutton. Mm. Okay. So this is all like, proper table manners, these things that we're learning here. Okay, let's go on. So it says, כתוב בשיבול הלקט. So it says in this book, מצאתי בשם רבנו היי, but he found the name of this rabbi, שניים שבאו לאכול ומברך נוטל רשות מחברו. So he says, let's say 2 people came to eat, right? So the one who blesses takes permission from his fellow. ואומר לו ברשות מורי, right? To tell him like, yeah, with your permission, I'm cutting, right? I'm breaking the bread. והוא עונה ברשות שמיים. He answers like, yes, with the permission of heaven. You are heavenly ordained, right? To cut that piece of bread. Okay. שכח שנינו בברכות, that's what it says in ברכות, נ"ה עמוד א', ראה קראתי בשם בצלאל, right? It says there, yes, I called the name of בצלאל, right? אמר הקדוש ברוך הוא למשה. So Hashem said to Moshe, הגון לפניך בצלאל. So he says, do you like this guy בצלאל? Is he good? Good for you? כך בסעודה בני השיבה ויכולים חשוב שבהן לברך, והוא אומר ברשות רבותיי, כלומר זה, אני יודע אם אתם מסכימים, שקדוש ברוך הוא מסכים עמכם, והם משיבים ברשות השמיים. So yeah, in other words, he's telling you the same thing here. That he takes permission from them as if as right, and he tells them, yes, you have permission, blah blah blah. We're not accustomed to do this today, this kind of stuff. All these declarations, never saw anybody doing this today. Okay, whatever, it's all good. says שנאה והגון, שנאה והגון אתה לפניך לפנינו וברך ותציע. בא להם יין בתוך המזון. Okay, so then he goes on, right? So, okay, we don't do that. We don't make these declarations, Yes, you are heavenly ordained. Yes, we are. Yes, nobody does that today. But whatever, it's written, it's written in some places. Okay. So what was the source for this? Shibboleh Leket. Yeah, okay. This book is not really something that we follow, so strictly. This kind of book, Shibboleh Leket. We don't religiously follow it so much. Okay, so anyway, right? That's what it says there. Shari kol echad mevarech le'atzmo. It says, but each one is going to bless by himself. Lefi she'en bet habliya panui lechach. So it says because the food pipes is not fitting for this. Doesn't have enough room, whatever. So let's see what that means. Yeah, so before that, there's a little bit thing here. It says like this: "Balahem yain betoch hamazon." Right? Let's say they brought some wine now to drink, during the meal. And tzarich lomar, he doesn't have to say, right, this declaration that we just said, Birshut Mori, right, doing it with your permission. Sharek kol echad mevarech latzmo. Why? Oh, so now it fits in. So each one blesses for himself, when it comes to the yain. When it comes to the wine. So it's not like, one blesses for everybody. לכך הוא אומר, סברו רבותיי, כדי שיניחו אכילתם ויתנו דעתם לשמוע ברכה. That's why he says, right, Savri, we said this also. Savri Maranan, when we drink the wine. So what does that mean, right? Pay attention to my blessing. So you can answer Amen. ואם תאמר הרי קידוש והבדלה שבית הבלייה פנוי. So it says, but if you're going to tell me regarding Kiddush and Havdalah, where you are your gullet, right, is has a room there. So yeah, okay, I get the point now. What he was trying to say, that when you're eating the bread, right, your throat is full of bread. So that's why we don't want you now talking, making declarations, because you're too busy swallowing your bread. So this is why we don't do it when it comes to the wine, because you're already eating your bread, and we don't have now the room in your gullet is swallowing, so there's no time now to be talking about other things. But he says when it comes to Kiddush and Havdalah, so there we're not eating, right? We're just making Kiddush and Havdalah. So there he says, that's why we say, Savru Morai, שלא תחלוק בברכה האין, זה הכלל, אין מסברין אלא על היין, ואין מרשין אלא על הפת. Interesting, wow. So let's see what he means here. Yeah, so he says, again, right, one more time. So he says, when it comes to Kiddush and Havdalah, as we said, right, people are not eating at that time. So then why do we say Savru Mori, right? Morai, Shelot Tachalok Birkat Yain, Ziak, because we don't want to make differentiation between one cup of wine and the other cup of wine. That's why we do it that way. Even though here it's not really necessary. Ziak Elal, En Mos Mesavrin Ela Al Ayain Ve'en Marshin Ela Pat. So he says the rule is like this, as a general rule, right? When it comes to right, telling people to beware of the blessing, that's on the wine. Sabri Maranan, whatever. And when it comes to the bread, right, it's a matter of permission, to get permission. Yeah, so the truth is, right, when it comes to the bread, we don't do this permission business. When it comes to the wine, we do say, right, Savri Maranan. What does that mean? Listen, so you can hear the bracha, right, and say amen. Just listen, don't talk, right, because you're now swallowing your bread. I don't want you to choke. I don't want you to, get into trouble there, choke hazard. So, just be quiet and listen. No reason to give me any permission for anything. Okay, you're too busy now eating your food. So, okay, good. Let's move on. So he says, "My tamar lechem shehu reshut sheim ratzah shelo lechol reshut be'ado." So he says, what's the difference between bread and wine? So he says, when it comes to bread, it's like optional. In other words, you're not obligated to eat bread if you don't want to, right? We're not talking about Shabbat, by the way. We're just talking about every day. Every day, right? A person doesn't want to eat bread. He doesn't have to eat bread, right? You can have something else, pasta, whatever. שהוא רשות רביעים ברצה שלא לאכול ברשות בידו, לפיכך נוטל רשות, so therefore he has to take permission, כדי שיסכימו לכולם, everybody should agree to it, דעתם. אבל ברכת המזון וקידוש, בהבדלה, but when it comes to ברכת המזון, קידוש והבדלה, שהם חובה, with their obligation, אין צריך לומר רשות, you don't have to take permission, אלא סברו בוודאי, what you say is right, pay attention so you can answer amen. כלומר, תנו דעתכם, lebracha, right? Pay attention to this blessing that I'm saying. In order to fulfill your obligation. And they say l'chaim, right? To life. This is also wine which comes in the middle of the meal, in the midst of the meal. You don't have to take any permission there. So he says, because since they have what to eat, they need to wash it down, with some drink. Definitely to say, right, listen, pay attention to my blessing. So he says, the wine, I'm sorry, yeah, I didn't say it right. The wine causes, right, inebriation. Right? And because of the fear, he says, he's saying that. And they're answering, Amen, l'chaim, ad kan be'od ha'arich b'davar hazeh kakter. So he's a book at length about this, he says, right? But he says, I wrote it just briefly. Whatever, Yeah, so the truth is, we don't do everything he says here, in this book, Shibul HaLeket. Some of it we do, some of it we don't, but it's an interesting explanation. Sort of like, in-depth table manners. Right? Okay. So let's get to Shulchan Aruch, right? And we'll see what's there. So it says here, right? As we said, where do you break the bread? Where it's baked, nicely baked, right? Crispy, whatever. And ופת דידן יש לבצוע בצד הפת ויחתוך מעט בצד העליון בתחתונו. So he adds over here, right? The Ramah probably, right? He says here that. So he says, in our bread, where is this, right? The crispy part. So it says it's going to be on the side of the bread, right? On top, on the bottom, right? All those, So he says, take from those areas, top, bottom, side, right? All that good stuff. But don't take from the middle, right? That's the bad part. We don't want to bless on that, right? What does it mean, bad part? It means that it's not the proper place to bless. Okay, so then it moves on, the Shulchan Aruch, "Ve'achtoch prusat b'tziah." So then, right, break the bread, break a piece off. וצריך לחתוך מעט, שאם יאחוז בפרוסה, יעלו שאר כיכר עמו. So he says, you know what? You got to cut a little bit. So what does that mean? That if you take that little, cut piece, the whole loaf will go with it. So don't cut too much because otherwise it'll break off. Then it's going to be considered like a sliced bread. But leave it like attached to the loaf, ויתחיל לברך, ואחר כך שסיים הברכה, so then, right, once he finishes the blessing, then like, cut it off altogether. כדי שתכלה הברכה בעוד שהפת שלם. Why is that? Because this way, right, when the blessing finishes, we want the bread to be still complete. So now here's the question, right? Let's address all these issues here. The question is, okay, I understand, right, that I want the loaf to be whole, as I finish my blessing, right, and not cut it before too much. But the question is then, why cut it at all? Before the blessing. What's the purpose of that? So let's see the Mishnah Berurah, right? She'll probably explain to us what's going on. So right, so he explains it. Yeah, all right, that's coming back to me. I've seen this already. So it says in Mishnah Berurah, the reason why we say to cut it a little bit before the blessing is because this way, once you finish the blessing, you can like apportion it quickly to your guests or whatever, or even to yourself. There shouldn't be, in other words, too much of a wait, after the blessing. So, obviously he's talking like about some like a big loaf here, where it takes time to cut it, as opposed to like, if you're having some kind of a pita, or like the stuff that I have, these Bukharian breads that I eat over here in Queens, right? So these things, you don't have to cut them because, you can break them like really fast. Why is that? Because they're very skinny, so, these are like Eastern breads, whatever. So these Eastern breads, they don't really need to be cut at all. So which bread needs to be cut? Those thick chalot, like Ashkenazim they have, you know what I mean? That stuff, takes a while to cut it. So, so then I guess it fits in very well why they do this, the Ashkenazim. They cut a little bit with a knife because they know, that their bread is very thick. Okay, it's all good, whatever. Obviously you don't have to do this with a pita. Pita is so thin, you break it off in a second. A split second you can break it off, So what do you need to? You don't need that. So also, right, another thing to understand is that this is lichatchila. In other words, it's proper to do this, to cut a little bit, but it's not really an obligation, so much really, to cut it before. But what we do want, is that the loaf should be complete, at least mostly, before you finish the blessing, because this way you're blessing on a complete loaf, and that's more honorable to the, to the blessing, whatever, to do a complete loaf. By the way, just to make you understand, when we say like, blessing on a complete loaf, we're talking about somebody who has a complete loaf, but if you have only like, slices, You can bless on that too, you know. I'm not saying you can't bless on that. I'm saying if you have a choice, you know, the complete loaf is the better option. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Right? It's more respectable to the blessing. That's what we're saying. Okay. So let's move on a little bit. So then he says like this, right? Once he finishes the blessing, then you break it all together, right? Totally. So this way, the blessing will be finished while the loaf is still complete. Right? And also, right now, the next is the next lesson, right over here, which is, yeah, you know, like don't break off like birdie pieces. You know what I mean? You're not feeding birds. You know, your friends are not birds. So give them something a little bit respectable, right? Because it looks like you're being very miserly with them. We don't want that. Doesn't look nice, you know. What happened? You afraid they're gonna eat all your loaf of bread? Is that what you're afraid of? You know? Don't be so cheap, you know. Give them something. What's the big deal? I mean, Hashem will give you more bread. Don't worry. You know, it's not gonna finish. So don't worry. You'll have another piece tomorrow. You'll have another loaf of tomorrow also, Bezat Hashem. So give them a respectable size. Don't pursue at every right? And also, don't. So in other words, what are we saying here? Right? Don't give them less than a kazait, too small. Right? And don't give them more than betzah, right? More than an egg size. So somewhere in between there, that's a good spot, the sweet spot between kazait and kabetza. That's it, right? So what's the problem if you give him too much? Then it looks like, oh man, this guy, he's a glutton, he likes to eat a lot, this guy, right? He puts it down, he packs it away. Oh, oh boy. Just reminded me, one time I was going to my doctor, or whatever, last year when I was sick, whatever. So one time, I went to the doctor, she tells me, says, you gained so much weight. He says, when you eat when you eat your bread, he says, just make hamotzi, and that's it. He says, don't eat anymore. She tells me. I was like, oh, okay. Is that what I should do? Okay, that's nice to know. Okay, so he says she just allows me to make hamotzi. That's good enough, whatever. Okay, so okay, says the Ramah here. وبشبات lo يخطוך בכיכר עד אחר הברכה, right? But it says, on Shabbat, right? Don't do this. So what does that mean? Don't do that cut, like we said before the blessing. Why is that? כדי שיהיו כיכרות שלמות, because we want, the loaves to be like really complete on Shabbat. We want two complete loaves. No cuts, no nicks, right? No, 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 none of that stuff. No breakage. Yeah, so I did see, that my Rabbi Maran, it says, by the way, it says your side tonight, Alav Shalom, Gimel Cheshvan. So anyway, right, we'll be posting some things about him, some lectures about that tonight and tomorrow. B'ezrat Hashem, we already posted one today. We're posting a little bit more tomorrow, so forth and so on. So anyway, right, he writes in his books that one of his books, yeah, I think it's in Chazon Ovadia. He writes there that there's a couple of questions that come up with this. Number one is, on Shabbat, right? We say you got to like use a complete loaf, right? Not broken pieces, not a broken loaf, so forth and so on. Right. So the question is like this, um, what about if the loaf is like missing a little bit, it's not really complete, like something broke off there or something, whatever. That's one question, right? Then there's another question, which is, what about if it's cut? It's not really, so it's not really complete 100%, like we're talking about here. Or question number three, also, which is that, what about, like, by the way, there's a whole thing today when they make these chalot in the bakery that we eat for Shabbat, or even, could be also for weekdays as well. The rolls, all kinds of things that they make. What happens is, that these loaves, when they're in the oven, like they're attached to each other. And then what they do is that when they remove from the oven, they detach them, and they sell them as like separate loaves. But the truth is, in the oven, they were all connected. So the question is now, when they came out of the oven and they broke them into pieces, is each one considered to be like a complete loaf or not? Or is that a broken piece? So these are the questions, the rabbi addressed, Abba Shalman. So he said, right, that if the loaf is lacking, some piece, whatever. So he says, right, if it's like 1/60th, less than that, right, it's good. The missing part. But if it's something very substantial, then it's not considered to be complete at all. Makes sense, whatever. That's one thing. So then he said also regarding, the broken pieces from the oven, he said that since they're meant to be broken like that, and each one is called like a separate loaf, so therefore it's considered to be like a separate loaf for Shabbat purposes, even though, in the oven they were attached, as we said. You find this like it's very common, like when you buy, let's say, you go to the, bakery, right? You buy challah, right? Challah rolls, So these challah rolls, they're baked, they're attached, to each other. And then when they remove them from the oven, sometimes they separate them, or sometimes you have to separate them even when you open the package, they're still a little bit attached. So those are considered to be like separate loaves, since they're meant to be, like that, broken to off one from the other. And also, right, regarding the issue of a cut, if the piece is cut, so he said, like just what we mentioned here in the Bet Yosef, which was that, if you pick up the loaf, right, and that cut piece goes with it, then it's considered like one piece. So when it comes to, loaves, he gave us some laws, the laws of loaves, right? The rabbi of Shalom, right? He gave us that too. He gave us a lot of things. Baruch Hashem, he gave us that too. So that's what he said, regarding that. There's also, by the way, if you want to throw in another piece of good advice here, what about if the loaf is frozen, right? Can you use that to bless on that? Or maybe because it's frozen, it's not edible, so you can't bless on it. So the rabbi said that, if you have like, on Shabbat, you need two pieces, right? Two loaves. So if one of them is frozen, he says you can still bless on it, it's not a problem. Because even though right now it's not edible, but it will be in 15 minutes, so it's okay, not the end of the world. Just needs to be de-thawed a little bit, right? Whatever, right? So that's fine. So you can bless on that. But the truth is, it's better not to do that, right? Better to use a loaf which is not frozen if you can. Since it should be like edible, right away, whatever, that would be even better. But if you have only a frozen one, no problem. You can use that. Makes sense. Okay, whatever. All these things are good to know. So it goes on. You can't imagine, by the way, you don't have to tell since it's your side today, the rabbi. You can't imagine how much Torah we learned from this man. My God. He was a walking Sefer Torah, I can't even explain to you how much we learned from him, how much we got from him. It's just too much to even, to even talk about. I don't know what to tell you. When people ask me questions, they come. Most of the questions that they ask me, I already learned from the rabbi. These things. So like I can give them like straight. If I didn't know these things, where would I get these answers from? I would have to research myself. It would take me hours and hours of research, myself to do these things. He did us such a big favor, such a big chesed to teach us these halachot. So we should know, what to do. This was amazing, it was incredible. Incredible what he did for Am Yisrael, for the Jewish people. The Rabbi Al Shalom. Whoever didn't learn his, by the way, you should know, whoever didn't learn his books in this generation, I don't care if he's Ashkenazi or Sephardi, whatever it is, he doesn't know today halacha. He doesn't know it's good halacha. Because if you didn't learn all stuff that he said, you're not up to date. You're like way behind. I can tell you right now. You know? So, the rule is like this, you should know that you have to always learn the Torah of the Gedol Ador, the big rabbi of the generation. You have to learn his Torah. Why? Because Hashem brought that person, that rabbi, for you to teach you what to do in this world. If you don't learn it and you say, well, I don't need it because, I learned, Mishnah Brura and I learned Shulchan Aruch, so I don't need that. I don't need that stuff. It's not true what you're saying. You need it. You need it badly. So you better learn it. If you don't, you're going to get punished, lo aleinu, because Hashem sent you this person, to teach you, to instruct you to do your life properly, and you don't want to listen to, because you have a ego problem, your ego is too elevated, or whatever. Not good. You have to humble yourself, and learn from the great people, the great rabbis. If you don't, oh boy, what can I tell you? I feel sorry for you. Okay, whatever. So anyway, right, getting back to what we said. Right? But it says if he so it says, right, the Ramah, and if he forgot, right, and he did it like the weekday style, he cut a little bit before, it's okay, no big deal, it's not the end of the world, as we said, right? Even if it's a little bit cut, it's still considered to be complete. But on Shabbat, as we said, right, better to just leave it like that. Don't cut it at all. But here's the thing, that I remember when I was going, as a guest to a certain rabbi, Ashkenazi guy. He was cutting also on Shabbat, So if I would have known this, I would have told him, not to do it on Shabbat. But now it's too late. I haven't seen him in a long time, so I can't tell him now. Okay, maybe I should call him. Okay, we'll see what happens. Billionaire, right? Okay, I don't think I have his number. Okay, whatever. Anyway, right? I could probably find the phone book, whatever. Okay, it's all good. Anyway, right? דלא יבצע יותר מקבצה, היינו דווקא בחול, בינו לבדו, right? אבל בשבת, right. So the Ramah brings the other thing which we learned in Beit Yosef, which is that, that which we said, right, not to do too big, right? That's only the weekdays, right? But on Shabbat, no, right? Just the opposite, right? Give him a nice big piece that's going to be enough for him for the whole seudah, for the whole meal. That's what you want to do, right? On Shabbat. This is also if you're eating with a lot of people, a big group, whatever. So he says, then you can, do whatever you need, cut as much as you need. Okay, so the point is like this, right? That on Shabbat you can do big stuff, right? Big, no problem. It's even a mitzvah to do it. According to the Talmud, that's the way it should go. As we said, according to Kabbalah, there is a thing like this, where even on Shabbat you do kazait. So whoever does kazait on Shabbat, he's okay. He's got something to rely on. It's all good. Okay, so I guess we'll stop there. Yeah, Baruch Hashem, we went a pretty good time. So thanks for coming. Be blessed with wealth and health and happiness. Hashem should bless you with lots of abundance, Bezat Hashem, so you can have nice big loaves, and bless on big loaves. All the big loaves in your life, Bezat Hashem. So we'll see you tomorrow. Chazak Baruch, Laila Tov.
Kavod Harav, thank you so much.
God bless. All the best.
Thank you.